What lies behind us and what lies before us are tiny matters compared to what lies within us. Ralph Waldo Emerson. There are moments in life when the world becomes loud, chaotic, and distracting. Everyone is pulling you in a different direction. Your phone is calling you. Your fears are calling you. Your habits are calling you. Your past is calling you. And if you are not careful, you will live a scattered life, giving your energy to everything and mastering nothing. That is why so many people stay busy but never become powerful. They move all day, but they do not move forward. They chase small things, but they lose the big thing. They react to every noise, but they never rise above the noise. And this is where the wisdom of the eagle begins to speak. The eagle does not waste its strength on every shadow in the sky. It does not fight the wind, it rises above it. It does not search for many places to belong. It locks its eyes on one target and commits fully until it reaches it. That is why the eagle is not just a bird, it is a lesson. So when we say, focus like eagle, we are not talking about mere concentration. We are talking about purpose, discipline, vision, the courage to ignore distraction, and the wisdom to pursue one worthy goal with unwavering intensity. This message matters because a distracted life is a defeated life. But a focused life becomes a force. And by the time this speech is over, you will understand why focus like eagle is not just an inspiring phrase, it is a law of success. When we ended the introduction, we were standing at the edge of an important truth. A distracted life is a defeated life, but a focused life becomes a force. And now the first lesson begins here, because before a person can focus like an eagle, that person must first learn how to see like one. An eagle does not begin its journey with noise, it begins with sight. It does not wake up and chase every movement in the sky. It does not waste its energy reacting to every wind, every shadow, every bird that passes by. The eagle sees clearly, and because it sees clearly, it moves deliberately. That is where power begins, not in motion, in vision. And this is where so many lives begin to fail. People are not always defeated because they are weak. Many are defeated because they are unclear. They want success, but they do not know exactly what success means for them. They want progress, but they have no definite direction. They want greatness, but their attention is split into 1,000 pieces. And when your vision is broken, your life becomes scattered. Napoleon Hill understood this when he taught the principle of definiteness of purpose. He knew that a person without a clear target will spend his life working hard at the wrong things. That is one of the great tragedies of human potential. A man can have talent, intelligence, education, and opportunity, yet still drift into mediocrity simply because he never decided what mattered most. History is full of men and women who became extraordinary because they were fixed on one higher vision. Abraham Lincoln was not admired because his path was easy. He was admired because his purpose was larger than his pain. He saw beyond the criticism, beyond the disappointment, beyond the seasons when everything around him seemed uncertain. He kept his eye on the nation, on justice, on unity. That kind of seeing gave his life direction. Thomas Edison is another witness. He failed repeatedly, but failure did not remove the image he carried in his mind. He saw the possibility of light before the world saw the bulb. That is what vision does. It allows you to live from the future you believe in, not the fear you feel in the present. And that is why the principle behind focus like eagle is so important. The eagle is not merely staring, it is discerning. It is identifying what deserves its strength. It is saying, without speaking, this is worth my flight, this is worth my energy, this is worth my pursuit. Now think about your own life. How many hours have been lost to things that were never worthy of your deepest attention? How many dreams have been weakened because your eyes were pulled toward comparison, distraction, and fear? How many times have you looked at your future only to let the noise of the moment make you forget it? That is why the first step in focus is not discipline, it is clarity. Because once you are clear, discipline has something to serve. Once you are clear, sacrifice has meaning. Once you are clear, delay becomes temporary instead of permanent. Marcus Aurelius said, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." In simple words, what you keep seeing repeatedly begins to shape who you become. If your mind is filled with confusion, your life will look confused. But if your mind is filled with purpose, your life will begin to reflect purpose. That is not poetry, that is reality. And this is where the eagle teaches us something beautiful. The eagle does not see from the ground. It rises to a higher place so it can see more clearly. That is a leadership lesson. That is a life lesson. If you stay too close to your emotions, you will misunderstand your direction. If you stay too close to every opinion, you will lose your own voice. Sometimes focus requires elevation. Sometimes you must rise above the noise just to remember what matters. There is a young man somewhere listening right now who is talented, but he is distracted. There is a woman listening right now who has a dream, but she is surrounded by too many competing voices. There is a student, a worker, a parent, an entrepreneur, someone who knows they were meant for more, but they keep living as though their life is a reaction instead of a mission. Hear this carefully. The problem is not always effort. Many times the problem is direction, and when direction is healed, effort becomes powerful. So what does it mean to focus like an eagle in practical life? It means deciding what your true target is. It means refusing to build your life around temporary applause. It means saying no to everything that weakens your assignment. It means putting your energy where your future is. That is why this title matters. Focus like eagle means you do not allow your eyes to wander from purpose. You do not let every passing distraction steal your destiny. You do not let the loudest thing become the most important thing. You become intentional. You become clear. You become dangerous to mediocrity. And once a person reaches that level of clarity, everything changes. Because now the mind is no longer a battlefield of confusion. It becomes a tool of direction. The heart is no longer scattered. It becomes steady. The hands are no longer busy with noise. They begin to build something real. So, the first great truth is this: before the eagle moves, it sees. Before the life changes, the vision changes. Before the destiny is fulfilled, the target must become clear. And that is exactly why focus like eagle is true. But seeing the target is only the beginning. Once the eagle sees, it must also refuse the distractions that try to pull it away from that target. And that is where the next chapter begins. Chapter 1 taught us something powerful. Before the eagle moves, it sees. Before a life becomes effective, the vision must become clear. But clarity alone is not enough. Many people know what they should do, yet still fail because something else happens after vision. Distraction enters the room. And distraction is dangerous because it rarely enters like an enemy. It enters like a friend. It says, just this once. It says, you deserve a break. It says, look over here. It says, everybody else is doing it. That is how destiny gets weakened. Not always by rebellion, but by attention that keeps shifting away from the target. The eagle understands something that many human beings forget. Every time you chase a distraction, you spend strength on something that was never assigned to your future. The eagle does not do that. When it locks onto its target, it refuses to be seduced by every motion around it. It knows that focus is not only about choosing the right thing, it is also about refusing the wrong thing. That is why this chapter matters, because once you know your purpose, your next test is discipline. Jim Rohn once taught that success is not something you pursue only on special days. It is something you practice through repeated choices. That means discipline is not a mood, it is a standard. And every great life is built by people who learned how to protect their attention. Look at history, and you will see this principle everywhere. Winston Churchill faced one of the darkest hours in modern history, yet he did not allow fear to scatter his mind. He stayed mentally anchored to the mission. While others panicked, he remained steady. That steadiness was not accidental. It was focus under pressure. Viktor Frankl gives us an even deeper picture. In a place where almost everything was taken from him, he discovered that the last human freedom is the ability to choose one's response. Think about that. When the outer world becomes chaotic, The inner world must become clear, disciplined. If a man can still direct his mind when life is painful, then distraction has not won. This is exactly why focus like eagle is true. The focused person is not ruled by the storm around them. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." That one sentence can rescue a life, because many people live as prisoners of circumstance. They let the news decide their mood. They let other people decide their confidence. They let temporary emotions decide permanent decisions. But the eagle does not live like that. The eagle rises above the noise. It understands that what happens around it is not stronger than the purpose inside it. And that brings us to a practical truth. If you want to focus like an eagle, you must learn the discipline of selective attention. Not everything deserves your reaction. Not every conversation deserves your energy. Not every invitation deserves your yes. Not every opportunity is actually an assignment. A wise person learns to ask, does this move me toward purpose, or does this pull me away from it? That question can save years of wasted effort. How many people have delayed their destiny because they kept entertaining distractions that looked harmless? Endless entertainment, endless comparison, endless procrastination, endless emotional reactions. A little distraction today becomes a broken dream tomorrow. This is why so many talented people never become effective. Their gifts are not the problem. Their lack of guarded attention is. Theodore Roosevelt understood something similar when he said, "Do what you can with what you have where you are." That is a call to discipline, not waiting for perfect conditions, not waiting for ideal people, not waiting for the mood to feel right. The focused person builds momentum where they are, and this is where the eagle becomes such a profound teacher. The eagle does not fight every bird in the sky. It does not argue with the wind. It does not waste itself proving that it exists. It simply stays committed to the target. That commitment is what makes it powerful. So that is why focus like eagle is not just a slogan. It is a survival principle. It is a success principle. It is a leadership principle. Because focus creates protection. Focus protects your time. Focus protects your mind. Focus protects your destiny. Focus protects your energy. And when your energy is protected, your life begins to produce something meaningful. Somebody listening right now knows exactly what distraction has been doing to them. You start the day with good intentions, but the phone takes over. You sit down to work, but your thoughts scatter. You begin to pray, but your mind wanders. You begin to build, but comparison drains your courage. That is not a character flaw alone. That is a focus problem. But the good news is this: what has been scattered can be gathered again. What has been distracted can be disciplined again. What has been weakened can be strengthened again. You can decide today that your life will no longer be ruled by every passing noise. SED. You can decide that your attention is valuable. You can decide that your future is too important to be constantly interrupted. And when you make that decision, you begin to rise like the eagle. So the lesson of this chapter is simple but powerful. Clarity gives you direction, but discipline keeps you there. Seeing the target matters, but refusing distraction is what proves you really meant it. And that is why the principle behind focus like eagle cannot be ignored. Because the eagle is not great merely because it can see far. It is great because it can stay fixed on what it sees until it reaches it. That is the mark of a powerful life. And once that truth settles in your heart, the next question becomes even deeper. What happens when the storm comes and focus is tested not by comfort, but by pressure? That is where the next chapter begins. When chapter 2 closed, we understood something essential. Clarity gives you direction, but discipline keeps you there. The eagle does not merely know where it is going, it refuses to be pulled away from it. And now the story deepens, because focus is not truly proven in calm weather. Focus is proven when the winds rise, when pressure increases, and when life tries to shake what you said you believed. This is where many people discover the difference between intention and commitment. It is easy to talk about focus when everything is convenient. It is easy to dream when the path is clear and the sky is quiet. But what happens when the storm arrives? What happens when the answer does not come quickly? What happens when the dream costs more than you expected? What happens when people misunderstand your direction and the pressure begins to build? That is where the eagle reveals one of the greatest lessons in life. The eagle does not panic when the storm comes. It does not retreat in confusion. It does not complain about the wind. It spreads its wings, lifts itself into the current, and uses the very force that threatens others to rise higher. That is not just nature, that is wisdom. And it is exactly why focus like eagle is true. Because real focus does not collapse under pressure. Real focus transforms pressure into elevation. Think about that for a moment. Many people see difficulty as proof that they should stop. The eagle sees the storm as a pathway upward. The same wind that pushes a weak bird downward becomes for the eagle a tool of ascent. This is one of the deepest leadership lessons ever illustrated in creation. Strength is not always measured by the absence of resistance, but by the ability to rise because of it. History gives us living examples of this truth. Winston Churchill, in the darkest years of war, was not guided by ease. He was guided by resolve. While fear spread through nations, he kept speaking with conviction because he understood that leadership is not the art of avoiding storms. It is the art of standing firm inside them. He did not let the crisis define his focus. He let his focus define how the crisis would be faced. And that is why focus like eagle is not a motivational phrase only. It is a survival principle. Viktor Frankl showed the same truth in a more painful setting. In a place where almost everything human could be stripped away, he discovered that meaning could still remain. He learned that when the outer world becomes unbearable, inner purpose must become unbreakable. That is not just philosophy. That is proof that a person can lose comfort and still keep direction. The storm may touch your body, your schedule, your reputation, your plans, but it does not have the authority to destroy your purpose unless you surrender it. Marcus Aurelius understood this too when he taught that external events do not govern the mind unless we allow them to. In other words, the storm is real, but it is not supreme. The pressure is real, but it is not final. The noise is real, but it is not lord over your life. When you live with that kind of inner mastery, you stop reacting like a victim and start responding like a builder. And this is the practical lesson for life. Pressure reveals where your focus lives. If your focus lives in comfort, the storm will break you. If your focus lives in applause, criticism will collapse you. If your focus lives in fear, uncertainty will paralyze you. But if your focus lives in purpose, the storm can actually strengthen you. That is why so many strong people are not strong because they avoided hardship. They are strong because hardship forced them to decide what mattered most. The storm removes illusions. It reveals whether you are serious or just interested. It reveals whether you are committed or merely emotional. There is a quiet power in this truth. When everything shakes, the focused person becomes more clear, not less. The focused person does not ask, "Why is this happening to me?" They begin asking, "What is this teaching me? How can I rise higher through this?" That is the language of the eagle. And that is the language of maturity. Theodore Roosevelt once said, "It is hard to fail, but it is worse never to have tried to succeed." Why? Because trying with focus, even in hardship, builds a life of significance. Refusing to move because the weather is rough only guarantees that you remain where you are. But the eagle teaches us that the wind is not always your enemy. Sometimes it is the very thing that lifts you into your next level. So hear this deeply. Your storm is not always a stop sign. Sometimes it is a launch system. Your pressure is not always a punishment. Sometimes it is preparation. Your resistance is not always rejection. Sometimes it is the force that teaches you to soar. That is why so many people who looked weak in easy times became mighty in hard times. The storm drew out what was already inside them, and the same is true for you. If purpose is inside you, then hardship does not erase it, it exposes it. And once exposed, it can be strengthened. Somebody listening right now is going through pressure and wondering whether the dream is worth it. Hear me clearly. The dream is often tested by the storm precisely because it matters. Anything meaningless can survive without resistance. But anything with destiny attached to it will be challenged. And that challenge is not proof of failure, it is proof of significance. So this chapter teaches us that focus is not only about vision and discipline, it is also about elevation through adversity. The eagle does not fear the storm because it knows how to use what threatens others to reach higher ground. This is exactly why focus like eagle is true. Focus is not fragile. Focus is adaptive. Focus is resilient. Focus knows how to rise. And that is the lesson we must carry forward. If you can stay centered in the storm, you are becoming something greater than circumstances. You are becoming a person whose life is anchored in purpose, not pressure. The next chapter will take us even deeper, because once the eagle has seen clearly, refused distraction, and used the storm, we must ask the final question. What kind of person emerges from that journey? What does focus ultimately produce in a life, in a leader, and in a destiny? That is where the conclusion begins to form. When chapter 3 ended, we learned something unforgettable. The storm is not always a stop sign. Sometimes it is a launch system. The eagle does not fear the wind because it understands that pressure can become elevation. And now we arrive at the final movement of this journey, because once a person has learned how to see clearly, refuse distraction, and rise through pressure, the next question is no longer whether they can survive. The real question is what kind of life they will build with the strength they have gained. This is where focus reveals its deepest reward. The eagle does not rise simply to enjoy the feeling of flying. It rises for a reason. It returns with purpose. It moves with intent. It does not waste its altitude on meaningless movement. In the same way, a focused life is not just a protected life or a disciplined life. It is a productive life. It becomes a life that delivers something valuable to the world. That is the secret many people miss. Focus is not only about personal success, it is about responsibility. A person who learns to focus like an eagle begins to understand that every strength they gain must serve a mission. Every lesson they survive must become wisdom. Every storm they endure must become testimony. Every season of discipline must produce fruit. This is why focus like eagle is more than a phrase. It is a way of becoming useful, effective, and dangerous to mediocrity. History proves this over and over again. Abraham Lincoln did not endure rejection, ridicule, and disappointment just to become a survivor. He became a servant of a greater cause. His focus gave his pain direction. Thomas Edison did not persist through failure merely to prove he was stubborn. He persisted because he saw a future that did not yet exist. His focus gave invention a path. That is why focus like eagle is true. It turns persistence into purpose and struggle into contribution. Aristotle said, "We are what we repeatedly do." Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. That is the final lesson of the eagle's path. Focus becomes a habit of excellence. It changes the way you wake up. It changes the way you work. It changes the way you speak. It changes the way you respond when life presses against you. A focused person no longer lives by impulse. They live by intention. And that matters because many people are not defeated by a lack of talent. They are defeated by a lack of follow-through. They start with energy but lose direction. They begin with desire but end with distraction. They dream with passion but work with inconsistency. But the eagle teaches us that a clear target, protected attention, and steadfast endurance can take an ordinary life and make it extraordinary. Jim Rohn once taught that success is not about one big event, but about small disciplines repeated over time. That is the road the eagle walks. Day after day, the same commitment. Day after day, the same target. Day after day, the same refusal to be less than what it was created to be. That is why focus like eagle is not just inspirational, it is practical. It tells you that greatness is not built in a moment of excitement, it is built in a lifetime of obedience to purpose. So now, take this into your own life. Return to your work with clarity. Return to your dreams with discipline. Return to your calling with courage. Let your mind settle on what truly matters. Let your energy stop leaking into everything that is temporary. Let your heart become steady enough to carry something lasting. That is how focused people live. They do not merely chase success. They become people through whom purpose can move. And here is the beautiful truth. When a person lives this way, others feel it. Families are strengthened, teams are lifted, communities are changed, leaders emerge. Because focus is never private for long. What you master within yourself eventually blesses someone else. So the final lesson of this chapter is simple and powerful. The eagle rises, but it also returns. It returns with value. It returns with precision. It returns with purpose. And that is exactly what your life is meant to do. This is why focus like eagle cannot be ignored. It is the difference between motion and mission, between noise and impact, between survival and significance. Now the journey is complete. We began with vision. We learned how the eagle sees before it acts. Then we learned how it refuses distraction. After that, we discovered how it uses the storm. And finally, we saw that focus does not end in flight. It ends in purpose. That is the whole message. A distracted life is a defeated life. A disciplined life becomes powerful. A life that rises above noise, refuses distraction, and endures the storm becomes a life that can carry purpose to its destination. So remember the eagle. It does not panic. It does not drift. It does not waste its strength on everything around it. It locks in, rises up, and returns with meaning. That is the challenge for you now. Choose your target, protect your attention, and stay faithful to the mission. Because when you focus like eagle, you do not just survive the sky, you master your assignment in it.